intersection of material sciences. In the intersection of material sciences, civil engineering, geosciences, architecture, biotechnology, and industrial design. After completing his BE from Vallabh Vidyanagar, Gujarat, and MSc in civil engineering with honors from TU Delft, he spent 1 year backpacking in India. During this time, he was exploring building with mud and learned the practice of using cow dung for plastering mud walls. In his PhD, he took on this personal knowledge gained from exploration, ground knowledge, and now Yask is understanding the science of cow dung and has recently found the answer to what makes cow dung water resistant. Using these insights, he is reinventing the cow dung mud bricks to suit the modern requirements, desire of the people in both India and the Netherlands. He has recently been awarded a research grant from the Dutch Science Foundation to pursue research on unfired brick made from mud and cow dung that can regulate indoor climate. I'm really excited to hear from Yash. As in the previous note, we have learned how much construction as an industry costs and how it takes away the top layer of our soil when we use mud. This is a totally groundbreaking approach to cow dung as a day-to-day usage. Yeah. Yash, please take over and go ahead.
I am sharing my slides. Can you see the slide?
Yes. We can see the slides. You can go on to full screen mode and go ahead.
I think now it's full screen. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for the introduction and inviting me to speak here. I'm really excited. As it's my presentation is sort of it's connected to what Itika said, but I really focus on the science of material, and I'm a researcher doing my PhD. So I will talk about those aspects and give you some insights which I'm still working on. So this work is yet to come out, but I will share my insights and my results. And I will start
to the symposium.
Yeah. I will start with as mentioned, I was doing a backpacking trip throughout India after my master's, and during this backpacking trip, I visited different places to understand and learn about mud houses, which are quite common in India. And during my visit to different places, I started talking to people. I even recorded, interviewed different people to understand what they really feel about mud housing, what they really think, uh, it's the future for building material, what kind of material they want to use in future. And I found many different mud houses like this, which has mud bricks. Either mixed with cow dung or sometimes used as a plaster. And most of these houses also use cow dung as a flooring material, so as a flooring plaster. So use of cow dung is something which is quite traditional. It's used for over 1,000 years actually, and it's nothing new to use cow dung and mud, a composite of it. But what we lack is essentially the knowledge behind it, and I will come to that. So these are some of the examples of houses which I'm showing here, which has cow dung as a plastering material, and they use it as a plastering material because people believe that it's water resistant. And if we make use of cow dung and mud, it can be a good solution to housing, especially in India, because mud and cow dung both are local material, cheap. They require minimum processing. It actually provides good indoor climate. There are a lot of research on that work. I won't talk into details about that, but it can control the indoor temperature and humidity. It's reusable, and it's also eco-friendly, and it has some good water resistance property which are generally believed on. The research couldn't really or at least the scientific research couldn't really prove it before. So why it is scientifically interesting to study cow dung? And the answer is that there is lack of scientific literature available on this study. People believe that cow dung is water resistant when they use it as a plastering material, and it works. But when people try to, or researchers try to replicate it in laboratory experiments, things didn't work out. So So still there is need for research which can prove or which can show if cow dung works, and if yes, how it works. So that's basically what I'm going to talk about today. And I will directly start with the project. It's a small part of my PhD project, but still a major part, where I collect cow dung from a local farm in my city Delft. It's just 2 kilometers away from the university, and it's a biological farm. And a good thing about this farm is that it's a semi-automated farm, which is really useful for research. Just a picture or just a video of a machine throwing fodder which can be eaten by cows. And the semi automation actually helps us a lot because we have quite consistent quality of food which is eaten by cow, and then they produce similar cow dung, which is quite useful and valuable in research. So here you see me collecting fresh cow dung. We also started initially collecting dry cow dung, but we mainly work with fresh cow dung, and you will know why. And this is fresh cow dung collected in containers, and then we just transport these to university, and then I start working on it in my lab. So what we do is we just collect the fresh cow dung and we mix it with soil, and eventually we have a process of making these kind of blocks. And you can see these blocks here. We compact the mix of soil and cow dung, and then we have these kind of blocks. And compaction machines are also quite common in India. In many cities and also rural areas there are hand compaction machines. So that was the idea, to use compaction because you can make quite dense blocks which are strong. uh, Contrary to what Itika said before, these block has just 2% cow dung finally. So it's very less amount of cow dung, but the properties of this block is determined, or it's really it comes from cow dung. So that's the interesting bit of it. So what I do after making these blocks, I dry it at room temperature. We have to do it a control test, and that's why do it. We do it at exact humidity and exact temperature, and then after 14 days, I have samples ready. These blocks, and these blocks are quite small blocks, so it's 4 centimeter cubes, and three of these blocks we use for strength testing, and the remaining six for water resistance testing. Today I won't speak won't go into detail of the strength testing, but I saw there were some questions regarding tensile test. But this is more on strength, compressive strength test, which is a essential building property. And here you see a graph or a plot with different numbers, different strength, but uh, uh, our different forces. But what is important to see is that you see these dashed lines. These are the minimum strength required by different countries for their mud blocks. So it's basically for mud construction. And by using cow dung, and specifically this cow dung with the soil we have used, and it's also locally available soil, we get strength which surpasses almost all the building codes. So in terms of strength, it's pretty good. It even surpasses the Indian code, which is about mixing cement and mud. So it's a mix of mud and cement, and then you have a very high strength, and it also surpasses that. So in terms of compressive strength, you can actually get good strength if you have good soil. Now I will come to the water resistance test. Here you can see on left a sort of a rain setup to see how these blocks behave in rain. And on right hand side, you can see immersion test where I keep the sample in water. And then what I do with these samples, that I take pictures of these sample, and I have done everything at home because of COVID time. It was quite easy to do this experiment at home, and I take image at different times, and then I see how the material degrades over time. So I will talk about or show you the results of this test, which are quite related to the rain test as well. So a mud block without any stabilization, and by stabilization I mean adding something like cow dung or cement, which improves water resistance. So this block is without anything, just mud and water compressed and dried. And you can see that in 15 minutes it starts, or at least in 20 minutes it completely disintegrates. But when you add cow dung, and here you can see cow dung stabilized mud block, the water resistance improves drastically. It's not like a fired brick or concrete which stays in water forever. It starts degrading, but it's also something which is desirable in some cases. And here you can see that as compared to 15 minutes without adding cow dung, in this case, it really improves the water resistance, and you get uh, at around 4 hours it starts degrading, and then in 24 hours the sample breaks. So definitely by adding cow dung you improve the water resistance, but that's, as I mentioned, not something new. We just wanted to see if it works. It works, but we wanted to know what makes cow dung water resistant. So we decided to investigate individual components of cow dung. So what cow dung is made up of? It's basically a mix of two things. Actually, cow dung contains a lot of things, but majorly it's mix of fibers and microbial aggregates. And these are microbes, and aggregates is particles, so it's microbial particles, and you have fibers. The cow dung we collect, we have around 40% fibers in it, and rest is microbial aggregate. And these microbial aggregates, here I'm going a little bit into technical details, so things might not be very much clear, but important thing is to remember that these microbial aggregates also have different sizes and different property. And here I show you something called small size microbial aggregate, SSMA, and something called medium size microbial aggregate, MSMA. So when you collect or you remove the fibers out of cow dung, over the time some particles or some compounds settle down. So those are MSMA, and those which are on top are SSMA. Important thing to realize is that they both are rich in microbes. Uh, this is just a image or electron microscope image at 20,000 magnification. Just to give you an idea, this is 5 micrometer, and the human hair here, the thickness of human hair is 75 micrometer. So if you multiply this scale by 75, then you see actually one hair. So it's quite magnified image. And here you can see some bacteria. These are gut bacteria which are found also in humans, but these are gut bacteria, and we see different particles uh, in cow dung, especially coming from the gut bacteria. And then essentially what we did is to use each individual component to make blocks and see which component is responsible for water resistance. So here I'm showing you a plot. What it shows is immersion duration, so the amount of time it was in water. And here I show you different recipe or different materials with which we made these blocks. And just to give you an idea, the setup you saw, I'm just showing you the image from this middle sample. In case you saw this image already, when you don't have cow dung, the sample fails in 15-30 minutes. When you add fiber, and people believe that fibers are giving cow dung water resistance, we see that you do improve water resistance a little bit, but not much. Then comes medium-sized microbial aggregate, and here you can see these aggregates or these particles improves water resistance a little bit more. So you see that at 1 hour it is almost fully degraded. But what we found, and which was also one of the important outcome, is that the small size microbial aggregates, and these aggregates or these particles are only 30% of the cow dung we receive. So it's one third of cow dung, which is actually completely responsible for the whole water resistance of cow dung. Here you can see that SSMA, and so when we add only these microbial aggregates in soil, and when we add cow dung in soil, the results are quite similar. So we concluded that it's only one small fraction of a part of cow dung which is important for water resistance, and the other parts can also be removed if required. And obviously this material SSMA is interesting, so you are curious to know what is it, and I will show you this video that what this material is capable of. And oh yeah, here you can see water droplet test, and it's amazingly water repellent. This is coming from cow dung, just the tiniest fraction. churned into powder form, and here you can see that it's very hydrophobic material. And we did several investigations on it, and we found out that it has 170 compounds. Just these particles have 170 compounds in it, but most of them are uh, something called fatty acids, and these acids are also present in butter and oil. So in that way it has similar properties of water repellency like butter or oil. So we realized that cow dung actually has certain particles which are water resistant. And then we did some research, the scientific research, and I will just show you some of the practical application of these insights, because these were really lab experiments, but how it can be used. One important finding for us was that only fresh cow dung works. Uh, so all the research work done until now was with dried cow dung. And when you add dry cow dung, here you can see that these samples degrade in 30 minutes. But when you have fresh cow dung, it stays in water for a longer time. So if someone wants to use cow dung with soil, it's the best strategy is to use fresh cow dung. And by fresh cow dung, you can take the cow dung and store it in a bucket for a long time until unless it does not get bad. You can still use it, but it should not dry. So it's really about the wet cow dung which works. We also know the reasons behind it, but I won't go into that detail now. In One more interesting thing is that when you mix cow dung with soil, there is still a smell in the block. So smell for many people is not a problem, but many people, especially in Netherlands, it's a problem. And we wanted to get rid of the smell without change adding any chemical or without doing any processing. So what we did is when you mix cow dung and soil, cover this mixture uh, with a lid or plastic bag or anything, and leave it for over time. What happens that more than after 3 days plus, it loses all the bad smell and it smells just like soil. So there's no smell of dung, it smells like soil, so there is no smell as well. Also, the wet mix does not have smell. So when it dries off, obviously smell will go off, but even the wet mix does not have that smell. And here you can see that more aging you provide to your mix. So in 14 days, you get better water resistance. So if you mix cow dung and soil, wait for 14 days and then use the mix, it would be more ideal. But you can still use it in 3 days. It's as good, just a little bit improvement when you store it for 14 days. Uh, Very short, just an overview here. What I did here, or what we did here, is to try adding cow dung to different type of soils. So there are different minerals in soils. So we tried doing this, preparing mixes with different types of soil. And here you can see that by understanding the science of cow dung and how the soil particle works, we could make a sample which never degraded in water, which is actually with sand. But these samples which you see in the last row, these are not suitable for construction because they are very weak. The top one is the strongest one, and if you go down this plot or this figure, you these the down samples are very weak. So it's basically a balance between strength and water resistance, which is required to make these kind of blocks. And here is an example that by choosing the right type of soil, you can actually improve the water resistance of your cow dung mud brick. So, what makes cow dung so special? One, it is available in excess quantity. I saw that in some region it's not available in much quantity, but because these bricks only require 2% of dung, so even if there is small percentage of cow dung available in a region in a specific location can be used. Soil dung mix is moldable. Uh, Also, this soil and dung mix can be stored for a long duration. And by long duration, I mean in Netherlands, we stored it for more than a year without growth of fungus. So it can be stored for a long time, which is a very interesting result which we saw in the lab. We really want to see how it perform outside the lab. Also, there is no smell in the sample. So with some patients, it really goes away. You have to wait for 3 and more days. It is strong, as I mentioned. It has good strength, and it is good water resistance, and it is also reusable. So once these bricks, the use is over, you can just crush them and throw it out, and it will work as a fertilizer in a way. uh, Now, some things about the our upscaling efforts, and this is the scale at which we work. So I made the samples in lab, which are only 4 centimeter in length, height, and width. But we decided to try to make bigger bricks like real scale bricks. And in Netherlands, we have a company which make these kind of mud bricks, but they generally use cement with mud. What we asked them to try cow dung with mud, and we made these kind of blocks. Here you can see those blocks which dried, and eventually we had these kind of bricks. You can see that they are quite dense, so they are not lightweight but quite heavy bricks, but they have good strength. And you can it has also a different shape, but regular shape bricks can also be made. And this was the first time we actually made a real scale brick. Otherwise, we were always working with small blocks in our lab. And some more pictures of this block. And in our university, we have this structure, and we will be using these bricks to cover up these part of walls. So we will actually fill up these frames and see over time how it degrades in a real rain. Because there was also one question about the rain, and uh, theoretically it should survive, but you saw that it does not survive for long. So we want to really see how it behaves in a real environment, and we will know about it actually after many years. But still, we have some lab testing to support it. Uh, Finally, I would like to just share some student projects which actually concluded last week, showing different potential of cow dung. Itika already showed you different potential, but this is some more applications. But this is with the mix of mud and cow dung. And here you see that the students designed this kind of a specific tile. And what this tile can do is, I don't have the picture, but over the time it will degrade, and then there will be flowers or plants coming out of these big holes actually. So these holes are to store seeds, and when it degrades there will be growth of plant. Also, student tried making different pots, flower pots. Here you see these are red in color, and that's because of the soil type we use. So by choosing a soil of different color, you can make different uh, pots of different colors. But also they played with the texture, and here you see the texture of jute on these pots. So this was one of the first samples they made, and I also have some of them at my home, and I will test them how water resistant they are. So that was essentially what I've been working on. I'm still working on cow dung research, and if you have any question, I will look at that now. But you can always contact me. You can take a picture of this slide, or I will also share my email ID, and you can reach me. And I'm more than willing to share whatever insights or whatever results we have from our research. Thank you.
Thank you, Yask, for the wonderful presentation. If we have some time, I'd like to read out some questions from our participants. I hope my audio is clear.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, great. What is the design life of the bricks is one question.
Okay. So with design life, at our scale, the scale we are working is really at microscopic material level. So we never really predict the design life. But what I can say is that the mud houses, the traditional mud houses, are generally without any additive. And by adding cow dung, you can, and this is still a very assumption, but you can improve it by 2 times. So I think it can be 2 times better. And in lab, it is 20 times better. But in reality, I expect them to be 3 times better than the normal unfired bricks, so normal mud house bricks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And when in terms of buying from a farmer per ton, how is the price compared to like dry dung and wet dung? It's usually got it at what stage?
Okay. In our case, we didn't buy the dung because it's a research project. We just went to this farm and we collected. So I think Itika can be a better person to give this answer. But I think collection of dry dung would be much easier, at least for the transportation purposes. Wet dung uh, would be useful if you're using them locally, or you can transport it easily. So ideally, wet dung should be expensive, but you don't need any processing. So you can just collect it, keep it in a container. We also tried keeping it a container for 30 days, and there was growth of some fungus and bacteria, but only on the top layer. So we removed the top layer and used the material underneath it. So it is possible to, at least in the conditions in Netherlands, 30 days of fresh cow dung just stored in a container was still useful for us.
Yes, Sri, this question is from our side. So here we have
Yeah.
a small biogas plant and we get digestate from it, which is basically, it takes at least 30 days for the cow dung that's gone in to come out through that. And we've tried, making small bricks and other small panels with
Yeah.
digestate. Have you tried, what stage would you say that fresh cow dung is better? What are the properties of fresh cow dung in comparison with the digestate that is dried, for example, and used?
Okay. So I think the actually the scientific way to figure out is to really check this as I mentioned, there's a microbial component which is responsible for water resistance. So the only way to figure out is to really see how much of this component is there after this 30 days in biogas plant. So if you have the component available, I think it should not be a problem, but it's really about measuring this quantity, which I agree it's very difficult on field. But my assumption would be that if it is in biogas plant, it produces methane, it will still have the fatty acids because the bacteria, what we are talking about are bacteria, but it's actually the dead cells of these bacteria. So the bacteria, when they die, they have their skin, and that skin contains this kind of hydrophobic or water repelling material. So I think you can still use it. Make sure that the fiber amount of fiber is less. I think that would be a better approach towards it.
All
You should
right.
still have the smelling part. Actually, that's the important
Okay.
thing. This part which smells is also the part which is water resistant.
All right. Okay. Maybe we'll, do some small experiments around that
Sure, sure, sure.
as well. Yeah. Ajay, one more question is in with regard to you mentioned in your slides that you've tried with 2% of cow dung.
Yeah.
What is the maximum percentage of cow dung you've tried with, whether it's for bricks or for plastering, and how do they compare?
Okay, so in my research, I focus only on 2% because we do quite some experiments just with 2%. And ideally, talking about it, we spent 1 year just with 2%. So we have not really tested any other percent. The reason we chose 2% is that based on other studies, we found that 2% is ideal. But uh, if you improve or increase the percentage, I don't see, especially with the mud block, I don't see that you will get much additional benefits. But it depends on the type of soil. So if you do, for example, 20% of dry cow dung in the block and just 2% of wet dung, might have similar properties, but something to be tested. Uh, and if you add more dung, fresh dung into soil, you will have such a liquidy soil that you cannot compress it. And that's why we didn't go beyond 2% because 2% dry cow dung represent 18% wet cow dung. So it's not that we use 2% dung, we use 18% dung, and this dung has 90% water. So it's mostly water, which evaporates over time. So then you are left with 2% dung.
All right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That is an insight. Okay.
Yeah.
Gee, one more question is
Yeah.
like, for what would be some parameters, like if we are experimenting on our own with simple Adobe bricks or,
Yeah.
compressed bricks with cow dung and different proportions here. So without like a sophisticated lab setup, what are
True.
some parameters we could mention, sort of test and then at a local level to see, how the bricks are doing and what proportions work best for us? Like what are the parameters like compression, or are there simple tests that we could do to?
For at least for measuring the amount of fibers, you can just use the fiber. Really put some cow dung, wash it very well so that you retain the fibers. And when you retain the fibers, you know how much the other material is. That's something you can do where you can figure out the content or the amount of fibers in, for example, 100 grams of cow dung. And you can find by calculating the content of these aggregates with this compressive strength and all. If your block is weak, you can stand over it, or you can put a lot of bricks over it, and you can do that. But in general, you require a lot of strength to really break the sample. So I'm not sure how to. There are people who do this compressive test by putting a lot of bricks over their one brick, and even people stand over it. But if you can do that kind of setup, it's possible, but you require tremendous force. It's easy to do water resistances. Just put the sample in water and see how fast it degrades. If it degrades in 2 hours, it does not mean that in real life it will degrade in 2 hours. We see that there is no one-to-one relation in that case. So it might be a case that it will stay for 50 years, but something which has to be really tested on field. So, but I will think about more of these small tests or simple tests and communicate to you.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you. Ji, one question. From a participant, what is
Yeah.
special about cow dung and not other animals? So, how is cow dung different as compared to, for example, horse dung?
I
What are
think
the properties
horse.
that make it unique?
I believe any dung can be useful here. So, for example, horse dung can also work out, and I'm saying that because people have used cow dung, horse dung in construction. It's also used. Just that cow dung is much more available, at least in most parts. One important thing is that it's okay, or it's more acceptable to use cow dung, because essentially, as I mentioned, it's only about bacteria, and bacteria are in all kind of dung, but you also have very bad microbes and disease spreading microbes. And with cow dung and the experience of working with cow dung, the traditional indigenous knowledge, I think it's a safer material. So it is more safer to work with cow dung as compared to other dungs. But horse dung and camel dung can be used, but not other dungs. Like you won't use uh, dung from dog or anything or any other animal, because it contains very bad microbes as well. Yeah.
Yes, yesterday when we were going through researches across, they were clearly pointing out this, the kind of bacteria cow dung has, and they were also showing us timelines across the past 3,000 years when they have done archaeological studies. It is one of the first animals where wherever they find civilization, they are seeing the skeletal remains of cows and cattle along with humans. So there is a
Nice.
very interlinked synergy which
That's
we
right.
are yet to prove out through the modern means.
True.
And
True.
this is very interesting. Yes, yes. See, as you pointed out, smell is the indicator for bacteria. Like that simple test, which could be spread fast,
Yeah.
could actually help your research consolidate more into Indian local scenarios.
That's
Thank you
right.
very
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
I think uh, that's about the questions we had today. So thank you so much for joining us, Yashji, and sharing insights from your research with us. Even for us personally at the organization, it's very exciting to see the work that you're doing, because we do it at a small level, but you're actually researching on this full time, and we wish you all the best for your research. And we also
Thank you.
definitely hope to be in touch with you, and
Sure.
also get your guidance
No, sure.
along
That
these
would be
lines.
great. Yeah.
So
I will also try
thank you
to
so
answer
much.
the questions in the message. I think that's okay. Or personally,
Sure,
if
yeah,
there
yeah,
are
yes,
some
yes.
remaining ones, I will just send them personal answers. Okay.
Definitely, definitely.
Great.
And
Thank you.
maybe I'll share your email ID and contact
Yeah,
details. We have put
sure.
it up in the website,
Great.
your LinkedIn profile, and also the article which talks about your work. So I request the participants to also take a look at that. Other than that, we'll be emailing the details of all the presenters and speakers to all of you.
Thank you.
So thank you. So this brings us to the end of the 3-day conference on cow-centric sustainability, global symposium, if I could say. And you would have seen that we had experts, grassroots experts share their work, owners of Goshalas share their work, best practices, and also, scientifically, technically, as well as, their heart and vision and motivation behind the work that they were doing. Like, for example, today morning, we had a very inspiring talk from the founder of Dakshin Vrindavan, who shared about how at 23 years of age, he decided to, rescue the bull and how that changed his life, now having a sanctuary of over 300 cows. And yesterday we had very insightful sessions on natural medicines for cows, DungSe uses of cows in construction, and so on. So I'm sorry, there was a technical glitch there. So just a few concluding remarks. We will be sharing all the sessions will be shared on YouTube in a couple of days. All of the sessions have been recorded. Most of these sessions have also been live streamed on Facebook, so you could also find the recordings there. This is basically a 3-day symposium. So over the past 3 days, we've been sharing live streaming it actually on Facebook. And I request all of you to check the page Anadi Foundations. We are active both on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Whatever learnings or experience you've had of the symposium, please feel free to connect with us and also drop a review or your learnings from this conference and how it's benefited you, or if that this has provided you more insights. Please feel free to share your experience with us. It would mean a lot to us if you could share your learnings or reviews on our Facebook page. I'm just dropping in the page's name here. The names are the same on all across all platforms. Anadi Foundation on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and the CREST page is ANAADI CREST on Instagram, and on Facebook it is CREST. It is the Center for Research in Ecology and Sustainable Technologies. You could also write to us at crest@anaadi.org. We do have on the website, you will find a link to, a call for Goshalas link. If you're a Goshala, or if you have some cows, and if you're doing even, anything that you're doing at the Goshala, whether it's, preparing organic fertilizers, or, if you have a log machine, if you're into, generating rural livelihoods through cows, or anything that you're doing with cows, please do share it with us as a small video. We'd like to, create a compendium of resources and best practices from across the country. That's also an effort that we wish to take through this symposium. So you'll find the call for Goshala videos in the website. Just taken a couple of minutes to fill the form. If you know any Goshala owners in your neighborhood, or anything that you visited, or any temple, Goshala as well, please also share it with them, so that it can be a very simple video shot by one's own self. And we'd be very, very happy to feature it and make it available on the website for everybody's benefit. So the effort and the idea of the conference is also to bring in work, people from the academia, entrepreneurs, grassroots workers from across different areas working on the cow ecosystem. And for us also personally, it's been very, very enriching and very inspiring. we are able to recommit to Gomata, and we see how important that is. One is amidst the pandemic and amongst all global challenges that we are facing today. This has only made us realize the importance that Gomata plays in sort of creating the re-emergence of sustainability and co-creating an alternative future that is more inclusive, just and sustainable. So thank you all once again from Anadi Foundation, and all of us here from Palani. Thank you for joining us. Namaste.
Now, we want to have a small message on the importance of communication of the importance of Gomata through all the mediums we hold, because once we have exposed to this knowledge of wide perspectives from researchers, from academicians, from Goshala owners, we have to understand this has to be projected and communicated. So please support us and give your details. We will make a document or a collection of all the mainstream best practices and communicate it to the Goshalas. For example, Punyamurti Ji's way of addressing cow related problems, and ESG's insight into making cow dung brings. A open source framework where the best of the world knowledge can be received through individual Goshalas and spread across India. So please do like and come into connection through our social media platforms and share them widely. Thank you very much. The recorded videos will be sent to you by the mail, which you can share. We will all end the program with a chant of Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. I'll start the first line of the chant, and then all the audience can repeat it. We need not unmute it. We'll just lead and follow it. Okay. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Thank you everyone for being a part of this global family. Energetic people, sustainable future.